Hi guys, Kevin here. I wanted to film this video really quick and get some thoughts out there as I've been thinking about my recent experience doing a master's program with Colorado State University Global, or CSU Global. So back in April, I finished the MS program they have for artificial intelligence and machine learning engineering. And I was thinking back when I first was looking into the program, so this was 2022 or 2021, fall 2021, but I didn't start until 2022. So I was looking back then, there weren't a lot of people out there reviewing the program, really just reviewing master's programs with CSU Global, talking about their experience. I did find some information on the undergraduate program. So I ended up actually going on LinkedIn and looking up or searching for people who had this particular program in their bio or their title or somewhere on their LinkedIn where I could search for it. And I came across three individuals, all of which who were in the program, hadn't finished the program. I messaged them. One got back to me, and we actually ended up on a phone call, and we talked about the program. The gist of what she informed me of was that she was already working in machine learning engineering. She had an undergrad degree. She needed a master's credential in order to qualify, I guess, for certain promotions, and that she didn't. Well, I think she was about a quarter of the way through, a third of the way through. She was happy with it. It was for her. It met her needs, but it was her take that it wasn't going to prepare you adequately to be a machine learning engineer, so much as it was just giving you some exposure, and you might need to go develop your skills elsewhere. But she needed the credential, so that's why she was pursuing it. So that was really good information for me. I ended up sitting on that information for about 6 months before finally applying to the program, because I wanted to make sure it was a good fit for me. If you don't know much about CSU Global, Colorado State University Global, they say it's part of the Colorado State University system. It's all one, I guess, organization, but it is separate. It's global. Maybe I'll get a picture of my degree. I'll show you what it looks like, my diploma. But that means that the schools are technically different. The programs are different. The student bodies are different. But it's all housed within the same organization. I guess that's what they talk about on their website. But my biggest concern was is this credential, if I get a master's through them, is it going to be valid? I mean, is it going to actually hold weight as a master's degree? But more importantly, because I'm an academic at heart, I always knew I wanted to do a master's, even though my life path has kind of kept me from that for a long time. Was it going to be academically rewarding? Was I going to be challenged? Was I actually going to learn some really good stuff? And so the short of all that, having gone through it now, is my biggest pro for it. I'm glad I did it. My biggest pro that I want you guys to know is that I was exposed to a vast amount of information in the world of artificial intelligence and machine learning, which has been really good for me. I was exposed to so much. There was a ton of reading. There was a ton of writing, which required me to do even more reading and searching. The exposure alone, I don't think is something that I would have figured out on my own, or I would have come across on my own. Like, it wouldn't have happened organically in my life, even though this is stuff I'm very interested in. This is stuff that I'm pursuing. So I think, I don't know that it was worth it for that. I don't want to necessarily say that. I do think my degree was worth it for me. And I had a good experience with that. I was glad for that. But let's back up. Let's talk about CSU Global, why it was a good fit for me, and what they have to offer. So you should know that initially I was applying to like computational mathematics kind of programs. And there was one at Johns Hopkins, the Whiting School of Engineering, I particularly was attracted to. A 2-year degree. They promised it was online. It was a little expensive. I think it came in around $50,000 for the 2 years. But I bet it would have been a really rigorous program, and I probably would have taken a lot from it. And I ended up getting rejected. So I did apply. I was rejected. I thought about waiting around and applying again. But with CSU Global, one of the attractive things about it is fairly inexpensive. So when I took it, it was $1,500 a course, or every 3 credits. So my total, I think, for my program, which happened to be 11 courses, was, $16,500. I did spend a little extra for some books here and there, but that's it. And over the course of 2 years, and that was very manageable for me. And I wanted to avoid debt. If I would have gone to Johns Hopkins, then I would have had to take out loans to do that. So avoiding debt was good for me. One could debate whether or not student loan debt is good debt versus bad debt. I mean, obviously it all depends. I just wanted to avoid that kind of debt. So on top of that, it was all online. It's flexible. They do 8-week courses, so it's accelerated. I do air quotes because it's accelerated in the sense that it's in a shorter time frame, but are you really getting as much out of it in that time frame? I don't know. But it did allow me to take one class at a time, nearly continuously for 2 years, and end up with a master's degree. I kind of liked that. I liked being able to focus on one class at a time. I liked that I didn't really there was a week or two for breaks here and there, but nearly continuously kept me engaged and thinking about what I was doing. So that was really good. So there are some good things. It was a good fit for me for those reasons. One of the other reasons why I chose it was because there were not a lot of attractive online programs in either computational mathematics or artificial intelligence, engineering, that there's just not a lot out there, right? And being, I have a family, I have a full-time job, I have a house and a mortgage. It's difficult to justify the stage in life, basically dropping everything and going to a full-time 2-year program. So for me, that wasn't an option. I couldn't justify that. No matter which way I approached it in the decision-making process, I needed an online school. I wanted to continue working and building up my experience. And doubly so, I mean, a master's degree really is just a credential, right? And so, getting that experience in the workplace is incredibly valuable. And so I needed to keep working. I felt like that was just as important, if not more important, than getting a master's. But I wanted to get a master's. Okay, let's talk about the classes themselves. As I said before, they're 8 weeks long. And you get a textbook, you're assigned a textbook, and they either provide it through a partner, so it's digital, and you do have to pay for it. Or I guess some of the courses, they were some free texts. I typically like to own a physical copy of a textbook, and so I went out and found my own textbooks most of the time. Not all the texts I realized I'd want to keep, but just for me studying a text, especially when I have to read so much, it's better for me to do it off screen, if you will. But there's a lot of reading, so you're expected to read multiple chapters a week. You're expected to participate in what they call a discussion post. And what that looks like is every week on Thursday, you had to have responded to a prompt that the instructor gives you in a forum-like space on their portal. And then over the next few days after that, you respond to at least 2 of your classmates. And so you engage them in discussion of sorts, right? And then there were often what they called critical thinking assignments on a weekly basis. Usually it was a paper or a coding project, or a coding assignment. You had to submit some code or write a paper. And most classes, if I recall, had a course-long project with milestones. So over the 8-week course, you had to complete a project. Milestones, it varied on the class. Sometimes you had a milestone in week 4. Sometimes you had a milestone for each 1, 2, 3 weeks, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and so on. So that's kind of the format of the classes. Now it's all online. You have this portal. It's somewhat asynchronous in that, aside from the deadlines, you don't really have to engage with anybody at all, right? Except on your own time, the material. So do you like to read? Do you like to write? Can you process information by yourself, or do you need a lecturer? There were no lectures. The lecture was often a series of slides that was mostly text. So you have your textbook, you have some text and some slides. Sometimes they included links for some videos, like on LinkedIn. I guess LinkedIn has an educational portal, and so people post videos there. And yeah, I was actually rather surprised at how many videos just in the lecture for the course just were random people on the internet, either on YouTube or LinkedIn. and I say random, I'm sure it was curated for that class in the sense that the professor went out, somebody went out and decided, okay, this is a good source. But it felt random, right? It felt very random. And so now you also have this quality difference between videos depending on the lecture, depending on the course. You have, it's just not consistent. Not only that, just minor grievances as far as like the editing of the lecture notes. There's often a lot of mistakes, grammar and spelling, that kind of thing. But then also like with the coding side of things, many times you would realize as you're going through the lecture and in the notes and trying to follow along that it hasn't been updated for the latest versions of whatever systems you're using. Or perhaps you see that it was, whatever they were getting their source from and moving it into this lecture format, they missed a step, right? Just nobody went through, it seems like, and tried to do it like the student would. And it got to be a little frustrating sometimes. Now, in the world of software engineering, you often come across tutorials online or code repositories that are flawed, right? And you learn to work through those if you need to. And so it was frustrating, it was challenging, but at the same time, I was able to get through it all. I was able to fill in the blanks. I was able to ultimately come up with whatever results for an assignment I needed to. And so with that, though, I mean, if you wanted to reach out to your professors, there's just an email away. I guess technically you could call them. They did provide their phone numbers, like an office number. I never once called the professor. I did email them a couple of times. Some respond quickly, some take a couple days. I didn't have any issues with any of my professors. They all seemed pleasant and responsive, and they were there for you. At the same time, I didn't know them. I didn't know anything about them. I never saw them in video lecture. I mean, for all intents and purposes, they could have been just some random, they could have been a bot. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I don't know. So you got to think through those kinds of things when you think about whether or not this program is right for you. Do you like to read? Are you able to persevere independently? There was an area of the portal, the student portal, for the class where you could just kind of like a lounge where you could just chat with other students. Not once did I see anybody post in there over my entire program. I think the professor posted in there once. No, I lie. One student did post once, and they asked about a Python version. I think I even responded and said, I think it's supposed to be this, even though it wasn't provided anywhere. And then a couple weeks later, the professor responded. A couple weeks later in that lounge. Nobody seemed to be hanging out in the lounge. So it's very independent, this course of study, and it's very much you get what you put into it. You get out of it what you put into it. That works for me. I'm very interested in the subject. For me, my career depends upon it. I want an academic experience, and so I was able to eke out of it, I think, as much as I could. It wasn't perfect, and I am sure rigorous discussion and lecture and following up with professors and other kinds of assignments might have been better for me in like a traditional 2-year program on site somewhere, maybe actually even working on a thesis or something, but it just wasn't in the cards for me. And I think this has worked out for me the way I wanted to. Okay, and that leads me to the next thing, just grading and how you're graded on your assignments. So very quickly it became apparent that grades were less based on the quality of your work and more so on, was it formatted correctly? Did you actually answer the question? Did you check the boxes that we gave you to check? And less about, was this good work? Now, I'm the kind of person who's going to overwork something. I'm going to spend a lot of time on a paper, even if the end result I think is not my best work. I'm going to put a lot of effort into it because I want it to be a presentable paper. I want it to deserve a good grade. And then, sometimes I would write a paper and I would get like 98% because I didn't format a citation exactly correctly. And that's okay, because then I learn, right? I learn how to cite it. But then a different professor, is a little fuzzier on, the citation rules and maybe docks me for something that another professor didn't, or wants it in a different format. Not always very clear. Didn't really matter because I'm only getting docked like 1 or 2 points. Often I would still get mid to high 90s on a paper, in A range. And then there were a few papers where, I think I got, actually, I don't know. I got some poor grades on some assignments, and it all had to do with when I submitted them. So I submitted some things late, right? That matters, to some professors. Other professors, submit it whenever, as long as it's during the 8 weeks, and they'll grade it for you. And often you just, you submit it and they grade it. You did it. They give you a grade, a completion grade, essentially. It felt like they were looking for things to mark down, so you're not always getting 100%, but they're not actually grading the content. Very few times did I get feedback on anything. One professor did go through and she would underline passages of my paper directly corresponding to the questions or the prompts that were given in the assignment. And she would say, good, okay, that kind of thing. But it didn't seem to be critical. There wasn't a critical feedback loop. It was just very much you did the assignment, here you go. Let's see, other things to talk about, more on the administrative side of working with the university. Everything was done through an online portal and email. I did have an advisor, I guess. There wasn't much advising. It was more of just a contact who you could ask questions to. I loved them. They were very responsive. They were very cheerful and upbeat. I almost always email. There was one time I felt like I had to call, I needed a quick answer. And I felt bad because I think she wasn't expecting a call and maybe wasn't used to calls. I don't know. She didn't seem as herself on the phone, but she was very responsive and very supportive and followed up with emails. And just a great experience overall with that side of my master's program. Tuition paid through the portal, no big deal. I was not sponsored by my employer. I do think a lot of people who go through CSU Global are sponsored by their employer or sponsored by the military, or some other source. I paid my way, and it was very straightforward setting up a monthly payment plan. And just navigating the portal as far as getting the information I needed was very straightforward. It was not buggy or anything kind of like how the lecture notes were. So that was a good experience. It was very smooth. And although not very much is transparent as far as you're dealing with a portal, you're dealing with a web page, you're dealing with email. If you need questions answered, it's not like you can just go walk into an office and say, hey, how does this work? Right? So it's a very different experience, but it worked for me. Okay, I found my diploma. Here it is. As you can see, it says Colorado State University Global, and you can see where it says my degree program, and it's just a typical diploma. Now, what does global mean? How do I explain that to other people? Well, no one's asked. No one's cared. My work knows I got my degree. They didn't ask. I don't think they care where I got it. So as of right now, I can't really speak to the weight of the degree. If I were on the open market, I have no idea how it would be received. But I feel good about it. I feel like I can talk about it and talk about the academics. And actually, yeah, academics are something I could talk about. It isn't too difficult, although I don't really know how it's going to be received. I could start off by saying, hey, Colorado State University, they call it global because it's their online school, but it's part of their system. I think it's probably more important to just talk about what you did, projects you worked on, those kinds of things, which is what I would do, right? What I learned, what I experienced there, and then focus more on my actual work experience, not the degree. Definitely some pros and cons of studying with CSU Global for your master's, but it worked for me so far. I definitely found some of it frustrating, the lecture notes and such, as I mentioned, but most of it was rewarding. Feel free to hit me up with questions. If you comment down below, I'll happy to respond. So one thing I didn't talk about was the courses I actually took, and so I'd be happy to respond to those if anybody's curious. Otherwise, thanks for listening.